Hi, David Humphreys again with the second video in the second module of my foundation course for property investors. And this video is all about deciding and settling your strategy. Now, first of all, there is no single right strategy. Strategies are something which are personal to the investor. And whilst there will be a right strategy for you, that right strategy will not be or may not be suitable for another investor. For example, if you are a young investor, let's say you are between 25 and 35 years of age and thoroughly enjoying your day job and intend to keep your day job, then you will have probably a capital gain emphasis strategy. If, on the other hand, you are a 55 to 65-year-old investor looking to generate a pension and also give up your day job, then you will probably have a strategy which will place the emphasis on the rental income today with capital gain of less importance. Anyway, let's look at the elements that constitute a strategy. First of all, you need to decide what you are investing for. Obviously, you're investing for money, but when? When do you want the money? As with all investments, there are two yields, or there are two returns. There's capital gain, which means that the investment is increasing in value, and cash in the bank comes about when you sell the property. So it's cash in the bank on sale. And the second return is the yield in the case of property investment or rent. Rent equals yield, and if you're comparing it with other forms of investment, you're talking about dividends in the case of stocks and shares, for example. In the case of property, the rent is generally speaking paid monthly, or in the case of residential property it's paid monthly, and therefore you have monthly cash in your bank. Also, yield or rent is also referred to as positive cash flow, which means that the rent exceeds the operating costs and interest charges, resulting in positive cash flow or monthly cash in your bank pre-tax. There will be tax to pay, or generally speaking, on monthly cash flow. I say generally speaking because I will show you a strategy which reduces or eliminates the tax on rental income. The next question is that whether you go for a mixture of gain and yield. As an investor, you could go for a purely capital gain based strategy, and this was very common pre-credit crunch when property prices were increasing rapidly or almost every week, and many people invested purely for capital gain and forsook or ignored the yield and rent. So long as it paid the bills, that's all they were interested in. Today it's changed. Today people look for positive cash flow, and the emphasis is coming off the rent and yield, and capital gain has been put on the back burner, although certain parts of the country are still increasing in value. If you're going to go for a mixture of both, then you probably need to be investing in 2, maybe 3 different locations, because locations which have high gain potential generally have low yield and vice versa, and therefore you would need to invest in a location for your gain strategy and a separate location or a different location for your yield strategy. Then we come down to the main emphasis as to what sort of properties you're going to be letting, because the type of property you let will dictate the tenant that you let to. I start off with family lets. There are 4 options here, but there are many more options which we will cover through the course. But the 4 options I've got here are the obvious options if you want. Family lets, whether you're letting to a family living in a property, a house or a flat. Then we have the sharer lets, and sharers include students, they include professional sharers. In other words, they are non-family lets. Another strategy is forced appreciation, which is one of my favourites. And forced appreciation is where you buy a property that is in a run-down condition, fix it up, and the result is that the value of the property is greater than the original purchase price and the cost of fix-up. And this is gone into in great detail later in this foundation course. The advantage of forced appreciation is that having fixed the property up and increased its value, you're then able often to remortgage the property and get all your money out, leaving you with a no money left in situation and able to go off and buy the next property. You could place the emphasis on lease options and delayed completion. Lease option is where you're able to buy a property effectively for £1, or at least take control of it with an option to buy it later, and generate yield or rent because you pay maybe £500 a month for the property, paying off the mortgage, but are able to sublet it or let it out at maybe £700 or £800 a month, which gives you £300 a month of positive cash flow. Delayed completion, very briefly, and we cover it later in this course, very briefly, is where you exchange contracts on a property that you are going to buy, and the completion date, which is normally 4 to 6 weeks after the exchange of contracts, is delayed for months or even years. In the meantime, you let the property with the vendor's knowledge and at a profit rent or at a positive cash flow position. So once again, you will pay £500 a month for the property and let it at, let's say, £700 or £800 until such time as you complete the sale. You also need to look at the life of the investment. How long are you going to be involved? How long are you going to be a property investor? And how long will you be active or passive? You will start off as an active investor because you will start off buying properties. But there will come a time, probably or possibly, when you will have created a portfolio that you regard as being big enough, and then you will stop investing and enjoy the results of the portfolio that you've created, and you will change from being active to passive. It doesn't make any difference to any tax situation or anything like that. It simply means, are you going out every day searching for new properties to add to your portfolio, or are you going to sit in the south of France or in Spain enjoying the results of your hard work? You then need to look at who your customer is going to be, and I prefer the term customer to tenant. We are all customers, but the majority of us are not tenants. That may be not the case anymore, but certainly pre-credit crunch the majority weren't tenants, and often homeowners and property owners regarded tenants as second-class citizens, which is just not the case. So I prefer to call my tenants customers. And again, I've got 8 different customers here. There are more, and I'll go into detail later in the course. But often these customers are not suitable for a single property. If you buy, for instance, a 3-bedroom terraced house, it's not really ideal for one single person. It is ideal for a family. It might pass muster for student accommodation and professional sharers. Certainly it would be suitable for housing benefit tenants if the rent was right. A housing association would like it, and a company might, depending on location. On the other hand, buy a 4, 5, 6-bedroom property close to a university, and again, singles aren't going to be interested, neither are families, but your students certainly will. So you need to decide who your customer is and buy properties that are suitable for your customer base. And finally, we come to the exit route, and this is very, very important. Today you can go out, as I mentioned earlier, you can go out and buy a property today, and you can complete on the purchase inside a month, but try and sell it the next day and you could have a problem. So you need to decide within your strategy when you're going to sell. What's going to trigger off the sale, the decision to sell? And this almost needs to be on a per property basis, not necessarily on a portfolio basis. And who are you going to sell to? Who's going to buy this property from you? And it needs to be somebody other than another investor. because another investor will simply pay you bottom dollar, whereas you want top dollar or top pound. And I always adopt the policy that when I buy a property to let, I'm buying it to sell. So I buy to sell and let in the meantime. I love the forced appreciation strategy, so I buy properties and I fix these properties up for sale, not for letting. But I let them in the meantime until I decide to sell when it suits me, when it suits my strategy. Okay, so that brings me to the end of this video on decide and settle your strategy, which I hope you found interesting. It's something which is, as I say, individually unique to the individual investor, and you do have Skype time with me inside this course. So if you want to discuss your personal strategy, please Skype me. Okay, I thank you for listening, and I hope you found this interesting.